Representative Ted Lieu just cornered Attorney General Pam Bondi in what might easily be described as the most explosive, high-stakes, and consequential congressional confrontation of the entire decade, dropping a massive investigative bombshell about an actively ignored primary witness in the Epstein files that completely exposes a staggering, multi-layered institutional cover-up. You are currently presiding over an undeniable, continuous, and deeply concerning string of catastrophic institutional failures. Yet instead of utilizing your immense, unparalleled federal power to finally hold these exceptionally wealthy, politically connected, and influential men accountable for their actions, you are actively doing the exact opposite. You are overtly protecting them. Lieu declared these heavy, highly consequential words while directly confronting Bondi on live television about the Department of Justice's highly scrutinized handling of the most notorious sex trafficking network in modern legal history. When the Attorney General attempted to interrupt the proceedings to hastily steer the conversation toward defending Donald Trump, Lieu immediately and forcefully shut down her deflection, reclaiming his authority over the room. He demanded that she first answer his critical questions regarding the systemic, deeply rooted protection of high-profile individuals before he would voluntarily shift his focus to another man. Holding up stark, unredacted physical photographs for the entire congressional committee and the watching American public to clearly see, Lieu boldly challenged Bondi's highly controversial decision to completely shut down the federal investigation. He presented crystal clear, undeniable images of former Prince Andrew attending various lavish, exclusive private gatherings hosted by Jeffrey Epstein. While Congress legally permits the careful redaction of vulnerable victims' faces to strictly protect their privacy and identities under the provisions of the Federal Trafficking Victims Protection Act, Lieu emphasized a critical, unavoidable legal distinction regarding the unredacted individuals. He pointed out that the unredacted figures visible in those specific photographs were active patrons of a sprawling, illicit criminal enterprise. He forcefully asserted that anyone participating in, enabling, or patronizing Epstein's horrific sex operations is inherently guilty of a federal crime, making it utterly despicable and morally bankrupt, that the Department of Justice deliberately chose to legally protect privileged elite clients like the former royal. The absolute core of this explosive, televised confrontation centered around a highly controversial July 2025 Department of Justice memo that formally and quietly closed the massive federal case against Epstein's network of abusers. This unprecedented, sweeping memo issued under her leadership explicitly stated that federal investigators ultimately did not uncover evidence sufficient to even predicate a basic investigation against uncharged third parties. Brandishing the photographs as undeniable, visual evidence of criminal proximity and involvement staring her directly in the face, Lieu fiercely demanded to know exactly why Bondi unilaterally shut the investigation down last July, instead of vigorously prosecuting public figures like Prince Andrew. When Bondi defensively attempted to deflect the pressure by asking if Lieu had interrogated former Attorney General Merrick Garland with that exact same level of partisan ferocity, Lieu swiftly and surprisingly agreed that Garland had absolutely dropped the ball during his tenure. He openly acknowledged that a whole string of previous high-ranking officials, including Bill Barr and Alex Acosta, had also failed miserably in their sworn duties to the public. However, he firmly reminded Bondi that she is the official who is currently in charge, holding the highest reins of justice, and she is the one actively choosing to protect the guilty in the present day. Having firmly established the foundational legal facts and the historical context of these massive institutional failures, Lieu then intentionally shifted his focus directly to Donald Trump, noting his heavy, undeniable, and well-documented presence throughout the unsealed Epstein files. He pointed out that, very much like Prince Andrew, Trump had attended numerous exclusive parties alongside Jeffrey Epstein. Lieu asked point blank, without any hesitation, whether underage girls were present at those specific documented gatherings attended by the former president. Bondi immediately resorted to a fierce, rapid-fire character defense rather than addressing the substance of the inquiry. She called the entire line of questioning utterly ridiculous, claimed it was a desperate partisan attempt to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done, and aggressively insisted there was absolutely zero evidence of any crime committed by the president, loudly touting his administration as the most completely transparent presidency in American history. Reclaiming his time with undeniable commanding authority, Lieu dropped a massive, earth-shattering investigative bombshell that completely silenced the room. He flatly and unapologetically accused the sitting Attorney General of blatantly lying under oath on live videotape. He then produced a documented formal witness statement from an individual who had explicitly and voluntarily called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center to report a serious crime. This specific witness was a professional limousine driver who provided a chilling, highly detailed account to federal authorities. The driver claimed to have personally overheard Trump furiously threatening to stop the vehicle and physically hurt Epstein during a severely heated cell phone call. Furthermore, the driver stated he personally met a young woman who explicitly alleged she was severely assaulted by both of those men. Tragically, that exact same young woman later suffered a fatal, catastrophic incident involving a gunshot wound to the head, an incredibly grim scene that responding law enforcement officers reportedly stated could not possibly have been a self-inflicted suicide. The most devastating and consequential revelation of the entire congressional hearing was Lieu's staggering assertion that absolutely no one from the Department of Justice ever bothered to reach out and interview this critical voluntary witness. Expressing intense, palpable, and righteous outrage, Lieu stated that Epstein should rot in hell, and so should the powerful men who eagerly patronized his heinous, sprawling operation. With over 1,000 officially identified sex trafficking victims still desperately waiting for basic justice and absolutely zero accountability for the prominent men involved in the network, Lieu looked directly into Bondi's eyes. He told her she should be deeply ashamed of her actions and officially demanded her immediate resignation from office the very moment the congressional hearing concluded. When Lieu's time finally expired amidst intense, palpable procedural chaos, a representative from Alabama yielded his remaining minutes to the Attorney General so she could formulate a proper response to the devastating accusations. However, instead of addressing the glaring, undeniable issue of the uncontacted witness or the horrific allegations of assault and potential murder presented by Lieu, Bondi pivoted aggressively to attacking Lieu's home state of California. She loudly and repeatedly blamed the state's dangerous sanctuary city policies for actively refusing to honor federal detainers. She claimed this specific legislative refusal resulted directly in the release of exactly 4,561 criminal undocumented individuals directly onto local community streets. To further deflect, she rapidly rattled off the resulting local crime statistics, citing 31 homicides, 661 assaults, 574 burglaries, 184 robberies, 1,489 dangerous drug offenses, 379 weapons offenses, and 234 sexual predator offenses. She adamantly insisted this localized crime wave was the real underlying reason Lieu was trying to deflect the committee's attention by continually talking about the Epstein files. However, this dramatic, calculated political theater completely masks a glaring, deeply concerning procedural loophole regarding how federal investigations are officially handled. Every single federal tip logged through the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, which serves as the agency's absolute primary tip line for regular citizens reporting major federal crimes, is supposed to automatically trigger a mandatory, rigorous review process that fundamentally must include a Department of Justice interview. The only possible procedural way to successfully bypass this crucial dual-check system and independently close a major investigative file is to deliberately and consciously leave the primary reporting witness completely uncontacted. By failing to contact a key witness, the DOJ can simply issue a closing memo directly, sign the final bureaucratic paperwork, and ensure nobody in Washington asks the witness a single verifying question on the official record. Lieu proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is exactly what happened by specifically naming the intake channel, strongly indicating he was physically holding the actual unexamined federal document that neither this current administration nor the previous ones ever bothered to follow up on. This deliberately ignored tip sits at the dark, decaying center of a much deeper systemic institutional collapse that spans multiple decades and several different presidential administrations. Epstein's initial, highly publicized 2006 arrest in Palm Beach, Florida, resulted in a highly controversial, heavily criticized non-prosecution agreement orchestrated by local and federal authorities. This baffling legal deal allowed him to serve a mere 13 months in a county jail facility, complete with incredibly extensive work release privileges that allowed him to leave 6 days a week. The numerous victims were never notified of this agreement in advance, a deeply unethical and secretive move a federal judge later officially ruled as a direct, undeniable violation of the Federal Crime Victims' Rights Act. Following his subsequent 2019 federal indictment in New York under the leadership of Attorney General Bill Barr, Epstein met a highly suspicious end in a secure federal detention facility. While a government medical examiner initially ruled it a standard suicide, a highly respected forensic pathologist, later hired directly by Epstein's brother, heavily disputed that rapid ruling, citing severe physical injuries that were much more consistent with a violent homicidal incident. The Justice Department's own Inspector General thoroughly investigated the facility and uncovered severe, systematic, and shocking failures in basic supervision and security protocol. Yet incredibly, despite these findings, no one ever faced criminal charges in connection with his untimely death. While former Attorney General Merrick Garland did authorize the public release of some related documents during his tenure, absolutely no new criminal charges were ever filed against the wider network, ultimately paving the procedural way for Bondi's July 2025 memo to permanently slam the door on any institutional accountability. This sweeping, definitive memo completely crushed the lingering hopes of countless victims' advocates and dedicated lawmakers who had spent nearly 2 agonizing decades fiercely fighting to keep the cases active, funded, and open. Bondi had vigorously defended her legal stance by pointing to specific executive orders signed in early 2025 that explicitly directed the widespread declassification and release of Epstein-related documents to the public. However, astute legal critics and transparency advocates argued this heavily publicized release was highly selective and curated. They maintained that issuing a definitive investigative closing memo just months later was simply a calculated, cynical way of appearing totally transparent to the public, while simultaneously foreclosing on any real, lasting legal accountability for the powerful men involved. The devastating, long-term psychological and legal impact of closing this monumental case on the brave survivors simply cannot be overstated. Complex ongoing civil litigation surrounding Epstein's massive financial estate has produced numerous highly detailed court filings, officially naming dozens of prominent, highly influential global individuals. Many of these powerful figures appeared consistently and repeatedly in official flight logs for his private aircraft, or were explicitly identified by brave victims in sworn, heavily scrutinized legal depositions. While civil discovery and flight logs do not automatically equate to undeniable, prosecutable criminal liability, and the legal standard for a successful federal prosecution is exceptionally high, the July 2025 memo did not merely state that the current evidence was insufficient to successfully secure a trial conviction. Instead, it made the much narrower, sweeping, and categorical legal statement that there was absolutely no evidence sufficient to even open a basic predicate investigation into these uncharged third parties. Federal prosecutions against extraordinarily wealthy, politically connected, and endlessly well-resourced defendants are undeniably complex and fiercely difficult to win in a court of law. They fundamentally require a completely bulletproof chain of custody on decades-old documents, highly corroborating material evidence, and incredibly courageous victims willing to endure grueling, highly traumatic cross-examinations against some of the most skilled, aggressive, and expensive defense attorneys in the entire country. This harsh, undeniable legal reality provides a very thin, almost imperceptible veil of strategic logic to Bondi's claim of insufficient evidence when viewed strictly in a highly technical prosecutorial sense. It is true that surveillance photos of 2 people standing together at a party do not independently prove ongoing, prosecutable criminal conduct. Yet Representative Lieu brilliantly bypassed that entire exhausting, circular debate over legal prosecution standards. By doing so, he successfully exposed a fundamental, glaring, and inexcusable failure to even conduct a basic investigative process by actively ignoring a voluntary, highly detailed witness statement submitted directly to the FBI's official channels. Lieu's dramatic on-camera demand for Attorney General Bondi's immediate resignation may lack formal congressional procedural weight, but it serves as a massive, unforgettable public marker regarding basic official fitness, governmental integrity, and the sheer rot within the justice system. Bondi's immediate frantic retreat to reciting completely unrelated California crime statistics, forcefully signaled to every single person watching in the hearing room that she had completely run out of substantive, factual ground to defend the DOJ's highly questionable actions. The monumental, lingering question remaining after this explosive, absolutely historic hearing is whether the Justice Department will finally officially reach out to this uncontacted key witness, or if the deeply broken justice system will simply turn a blind eye once more, leaving the victims permanently trapped in the dark without any hope for closure. I genuinely and deeply want to hear your unique, unfiltered perspective on this staggering, unprecedented procedural failure within our highest levels of government. Do you honestly think true, lasting legal accountability is still a real possibility here? Or do you believe the entire system is permanently rigged to protect the global elite? Drop your thoughts, theories, and opinions down in the comment section below, as I always make sure to read as many as I possibly can to keep this vital conversation going. And if you truly appreciate this kind of straightforward, highly transparent, and extensively deep dive breakdown of official congressional hearings, please do me a massive favor by hitting that like button and making sure you are officially subscribed to the channel. It is the absolute best, most effective way to continually support our independent work so we can keep bringing you these vital, hard-hitting investigations day after day.